Hello everyone, let me introduce myself. I am Facundo Carvalho, and today I will show you how to create your first Python server with Flask. In this video, you will see how to implement post methods and get methods, how to receive data from the server using get methods, and how to send data to the server through the post methods. Just basic things about servers, like you can see. But at the end of the video, I will share with you how I implement the server to the application that I post in my last video, where this application allows you to make a backup of your images and videos from your smartphone to your computer, where in your computer it will be running a server, a Python server, that I create, and this server will handle all the images and videos that your smartphone will send to the server, and then the server will create folders by years, months, and days, and will be store the asset on the particular path to organize all of your images and videos in your computer. And well, what was the idea of the application? So at the end of the video, you will see how I implement the server on Python to create that application.
To create a server with Python, there are a lot of frameworks that help us to create that, like Flask, Django, FastAPI, Pyramid, Tornado, CherryPy, and others. In this case, I use Flask. To use this tool with Python, first we have to install it. Now we can start to develop our server. First, we have to create a Python file. Then we have to import Flask. Once we have Flask imported, we can start to create our server endpoints. An endpoint is an URL that allows clients to communicate with the server. Each endpoint represents a function or resources of the app, and it's identified with a unique URL. Can exist multiple endpoints in our server. The ideal is that the client can identify which endpoint needs to consume. Here are some examples of endpoints. Exist the get endpoints and the post endpoints. The get endpoints, the server sends information to the client requests that information, and the server responds to the client with the information that the client needs. And in the other hand, for the post request or post methods, the client sends information to the server, and the server reads that information and make something on the server or also on some database, if that was the case. But you have to know that main difference between get endpoints and post endpoints, where the get endpoints, the server have to respond to the user, to the client, with information, and in the post methods, the client sends information to the server, and the server handles that information.
Here I am creating a Flask object, passing to the constructor a name of the server that we will create. In this case will be Python server. And then we just can start creating our endpoints.
Creating an endpoint is very easy with Flask. We just have to follow this structure. To visualize better what we are doing here, we will create two endpoints of type get. To execute this server, we have to add this line of code. Here, we are indicating that the server will be running in our local host in port 3690. If you don't want to use the local host as your host, you can also set the host of the server, passing the host parameter to the function. But for this case, I will just use the local host. Now, if we access to this URL in any browser, you will see that we get the corresponding messages that we write on the code.
Also, if we change something in the source code of this server, for example, in this endpoint, we aggregate this line of indicating some extra message, we will see on the server, well, we'll have to run again our server, and then we can visualize the changes in the browser.
On the other hand, there exists the post request. This request contains information about something that the client sent to the server. So the server will have to be able to read that data and handle it. To do that, we have to import the requests module from Flask. And now we can create our first post endpoint.
Now we create an endpoint of type post. In this case, the post request will send to the server a username and a password, some structure of a user, a simple structure of a user, and we will get that information reading the request object from Flask, like you can see on the screen. And then we will have to read the data that the client is sending to the server using this key value standard, like a JSON. So we know that the client will send the username associated with the key username, and the same for the password. So the server will read the request JSON that gets from the client, and then we will get the username and password using this key value method of JSON. And well, in this case, for this simple case, the post request, the server in the post request just will print the username and the password on the console. But in a real server, this function will have to update or insert this new user to some database or do something more complex.
So to send data to this endpoint, we can create a client app with some website, for example, and from there make post requests to this server. But for this case, I will use a tool called Postman that allows you to make post requests or get request, well, any request, any HTTP request that you want to any server. You have to pass the URL and select the method that you want to use, and then just click a button and it will make the request. To use Postman, you first will have to create an account on their website, and then, well, you can use the web application of Postman, or like me, use the Visual Studio Code extension. Using the extension of Visual Studio Code of Postman is very similar to use the web application of Postman. You have to press to this button, new HTTP request, and then by default it selects the methods of the HTTP request on GET, but in this case we want to make a post request, so we have to select post, and then we have to paste the URL to our server. In this case, it's localhost 3060.190, and well, also the endpoint. In this case, is /post/users. And once we get that, we have to go to the body section and then to the row and choose JSON, because we want to send our data in a JSON format. And then we will create the JSON here, making the username as a key and then pasting the value. In this case will be my name, Facundo, and the same for the password. We have to write the key, in this case is password, and then, well, write any value. In this case I will pass 1 2 3 4 5. Once we get that, we just have to press the send button, and Postman will send the request for us. We can see that the server receives the data because, well, the server prints the username and the password on the console, and also because the server sends to the client, in this case is Postman, the successful message that say the post request successfully with the status code 200. So we can see that the post request is looking good. So now it's time to share with you how I implement the server for the backup application. In the case of the PhotoSync app, the server that I created there just have 2 endpoints, and both are of type post, because the client sent to the server the images or the videos. So we have one endpoint dedicated to receive images and other endpoint dedicated to receive videos. If we see more in detail the function that executes the server every time that some client makes a post request, first, in both functions, it creates a message object passing to the constructor method the request that this function gets. The constructor of message creates an object with all the data that the server needs to interact with the data that the client sends to the server, and, well, write the files on the computer to store the images and videos. When the server creates the message object, we are getting all the data corresponding to the body sent by the client, the body expected by the server, because maybe the client sends other structures of the body that the server will not understand. Because of that, and other many reasons, always we have to document our code, so the client and the server can understand each other. Once the server gets the message, calls the check folder function, which checks if the folder is created. And if it's not created, well, it will create that folder. After that, the server will call the function save data. This function first will check if all the folders that needs the server to save the asset are created. If some folder doesn't exist, well, it will create that folder, and then finally will write all the bytes that the client sent to the server, saving the asset in the computer. After that, the server will respond to the client with a successful message, because, well, server could write the bytes of the images or videos that the client sends to the server, so the server will respond with a successful message.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed the video, and if that's true, you can hit the like button and subscribe to my channel, because that helps me a lot to grow up on YouTube. And well, I will see you on the next video.